Today we're doing something I've never done before in my life, and that's going to a rodeo. It's gonna be fun. Broncos, bull riding, barrel racing, steer wrestling. Fun, super fun. One of the things we've been talking about lately is how easy it is to say something like, or we can just push through this project and then we'll be able to do this. After this happens, then we'll be able to do that. So Jill and I have started making a more conscious effort to think about our and thens. What are they? And is there any reason that we're not doing them right now, that they actually have to wait? And when we actually sat down and thought about what our and thens were, it was amazing how many of those and thens, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that, and then I'll be able to actually do what I want to do, then life will look like this. When we actually sat down and looked at our and thens, it was amazing how many of them really weren't tied to any reason that we were waiting on them. A lot of them were actually really simple things that were easy to implement right now. And for some reason, we had told ourselves that has to be in the future. That has to be then, sometime in the distance. Then I can be happy. Then I can do things that are a little bit more fulfilling. These things have to wait. I have to do the hard stuff right now, the things I don't like. There are often difficult things, daily things that have to be done right now that I'm not always super excited about. But it doesn't have to all be that. For example, I wanted to read more and Jill wanted to read more. And when we actually thought about that, we realized, yes, it would be nice to be able to read for a couple hours a day, but why not start with 10 minutes? And we found a time in the day, in the morning, when we can just sit down and read for 10 minutes and actually get through books and actually be learning things. And then there's things that we go, and then I'll have money for this, or then I'll have money for that. And even with those things, it's amazing how many times what we think we want and we can't have because we don't have enough money actually has to do with priorities and sloppy money handling. I should have Jill talk about that because she's got some really good thoughts on that.
I realized that in my budgeting and stuff, I started thinking about and thens a lot, like that, oh, you know what, we're not making enough now, we can't afford that, we can't whatever, right? And then I realized that I hadn't actually defined what I actually wanted. It was just, oh, it's all too big, we can't afford that. But once I actually sat down and defined exactly what I wanted, I started to realize like an extra $10, extra $20 a month to start putting into stuff. It actually wasn't that much of just being intentional about saving just that little bit more every month. All of a sudden, it was amazing to me how easy it was to all of a sudden do some of these things I thought were totally out of reach. And all I did was just be intentional. Sometimes I think we think oh, I can't afford that, can't whatever. And so you end up spending your money on little things that you don't actually really care about because you feel like you can't afford the big thing. But in reality, if you define the big thing that you want and you're intentional about saving for it, it's amazing actually how quickly you can get to that big thing. It's just a matter of actually defining it and deciding that you want it.
And this rodeo was one of those things where we would find ourselves saying, if we just push through, then we'll be able to do fun things as a family. Then we'll have the money to afford to go get an ice cream with the kids. And we realized, there's no reason this isn't an and then thing. It's just amazing how often I find myself reverting back to a victim mentality and a lack mentality, and I'm too poor for this. But when I actually look at our budget, we go, you know what? If we just cut out some of these things here that really aren't that fulfilling, that aren't that satisfying, we actually have lots of money to go and do some things like a rodeo and go buy a burger and enjoy it with the kids. And it doesn't have to be this, crazy elaborate trip to Disneyland or, an all-inclusive resort. Sometimes these simple things, just getting out of the house, just going and spending a little bit of money on something local, on something simple, like a rodeo, it makes all the difference. So I guess my challenge to you is, you know, what's your excuse? What's getting in the way? What are your and thens?
Yeah, I think that was really the big eye opener for me, is that often we tell ourselves something is out of reach, but it's only because we haven't defined it. So we see everybody else doing all this stuff and we say that's out of reach for me, but the reality is we don't actually, because we think it's out of reach, we haven't actually defined it. We haven't decided what we would do. I find that when you blur the goal and your goal is not defined, you can never attain it. You never know when you reach it. But if you actually sit down and define it, you can start to attain those goals. And so often the problem is not the fact that it's out of your reach, it's that you actually haven't sat down and really defined and made those goals that are actually, you feel like they're there, but they're actually quite vague sometimes. And if you actually sit down and just bring that down and define it, now it's possible to reach those goals and attain it and know what you need to do to get there.
Maybe your and then is that you want to make a feature film. Well, maybe you can't do that right now, but what steps are you actually taking? How are you actually taking action on moving towards that goal? Me and my dad started a filmmaking business because we wanted to make feature films, but we didn't feel qualified. And after a number of years of making educational films, because we felt like that was safer, we can do that, we got challenged by another creative to essentially look at our and then and go, what's actually stopping us from making a feature film? What is actually stopping you? If you're waiting for the perfect amount of knowledge, the perfect situation, the perfect, then I'll have all my gear and then I'll be able to make the movie and then I'll have the financing and then I'll have the connections and then I'll have the experience, and we can constantly live in the future and not realize that the main deterrent for actually doing what we want to do is not something out there. It's not our environment. It's not something outside of our control. It's actually us. So when me and my dad got challenged by this other creator, we looked at it and we realized, you know what? The main thing in our way is us. And we just set out. We didn't feel qualified. We didn't have a clue how to make a feature film, but we just did it. We just made the movie. And guess what? It wasn't that hard. We were able to do what we wanted to do. The only thing that had been stopping us and getting in our way was ourselves. Just like this rodeo. A number of years ago, we would have said, we can't do this. It's too expensive. It's out of our price range. We don't have time. It's just not going to work. Maybe sometime in the future, this will happen, and then we'll be able to do things like this. And here we are at the rodeo, having a great time, my first rodeo ever. to a rodeo before?
No, I had been to the Calgary Stampede once, but it was very just for a little bit of time, and I feel like we didn't actually end up doing a whole lot of things. So this was really my first time getting to be out and yeah, just getting to see it all, like what it's all about.
The fact that
Yeah.
we're even going to a rodeo and doing
Mhm.
something with the kids, spending money to get entrance, and then
Yeah.
spending money on food as a treat. That was one of our and thens that we didn't think we could even do, right? And
Yeah.
there was no reason for it. It was just a limiting belief, right, that was getting in our way. It was kind of silly,
Mhm.
but
And just not planning ahead and being intentional sometimes, right?
yeah, yeah, actually thinking about what we wanted and
Mhm.
yeah, letting life go by. Yeah, so it
Yeah.
was a good day. It was worth it.
It was, yeah, for sure. It was nice getting outside. And it was great being out in front of a whole bunch of people. Like that was really refreshing to just I think you take for granted your community a lot of times of thinking that often actually going to things where there's community and you're sharing it, even if it's just with a bunch of strangers, there's something about just being in community and sharing something and doing something that other people are the buzz of it. It was just great to be out in the buzz of people.
So I'll just leave you with that little challenge. Consider what are your and thens. Be realistic, be honest, don't do something foolish and stupid, but honestly look at what is holding you back. Is there a reason that and then is then and not now? And go make a change. Start doing the things that God has called you to do today and stop putting them and then in the future. If you like the video, give a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.